Good evening, members, and welcome back. Welcome to 2026. Hope everyone had a cracking Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. I know it seems wrong that we're talking about that here on the 21st of January, but I sincerely hope you did. Okay, there are no planned fire drills during this meeting, although I appear to have the loudest microphone in the history of the world. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts can't be used in the event of an emergency, and please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a member of staff. I'd like to thank Councillor Robertson for his absolute attention on the fire. You were really into the fire drills there, Joe. You very, yeah, it's great. Real attention tonight. Everyone's keyed up for a good 2026. I'd like to advise both members of the public and the press that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live. Mobile phones should be switched off unless they are being used for the meeting, and please only speak when you are invited to do so by the chair and speak into the microphone. I'll pick up briefly on our last meeting of 2025, where we discussed the foundation of integrity, honesty, openness, and respect that underpins public service. And we are reminded of this, of course, via the Code of Conduct, the Nolan Principles, and of course, the Penn Report that full council supported. We're here as representatives entrusted with a serious responsibility to conduct the community's business professionally, respectfully, and in the best interests of those who place their trust in us. And I have to say, the last debate we had ticked all those boxes. They may be passionate, our debates, and our views may differ. But that diversity of thought is part of what strengthens local democracy. So, with that in mind, our next item is declarations of interest. And I am being asked to remind members there is a general dispensation in place to allow councillors to discuss and determine the members' allowance scheme. If any members wish to declare, I do apologise. I'm so excited about tonight. I've got ahead of myself. I genuinely mean that. I am quite excited. Everyone's rejuvenated after Crimbo. So, first of all, let's start at the beginning. Apologies. So far, they've been received from Councillor Jones-Evans, Councillor PC Wilcox, Councillor Henry, Councillor Quigley, and Councillor Quirk. Leaders, do we have any more? Councillor Blake.
Councillor Ray dropped. Apologies from him.
Thank you, Ed. Now, although I've been reasonably upbeat with starting the meeting, I do have to move on with something that is, terribly saddening, to be brutally honest. I'd like to advise members of the passing of former Isle of Wight councillor Tony Coburn. Tony had been the member for Pan from 1995 to 2005, and before that, a Medina Borough councillor for Pan 1991 to 95. He also served in the position of Vice Chair of the Isle of Wight Council in his time as a councillor. After his retirement, he served as a Newport and Carisbrooke Community Councillor. And before opening this up to the floor for some words of reflection, I'd like to ask Councillor Broley to say a few words. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair, and it's very kind of you to allow me to say something. I'll be as quick as I can. If you would allow me to say just a few words in recognition of my late friend and mentor, Tony Coburn. I first met Tony 35 years ago when I first moved to Newport. We were both Labour members and trade unionists, and he walked me around Pan and Barton for the first time, shortly after he was elected to the old Medina Borough Council. After our walk, he said to me, "Well, Jeff, you have now seen the area that the rest of the Isle of Wight thinks is a dreadful place, but they don't know it at all. This is a real community, and I love being its representative." Over the past 35 years, I've learned how true he was. First when I was a governor at local schools, and then as his favoured successor as councillor. Tony was originally from Cardiff, He married a local girl, Greta, after they arrived here, and he brought up their family on Pan, where they lived for over 40 years. Sorry. He was first elected for Pan to this council at the start back in 1995 and held his seat through 3 elections for 10 years before handing over to me. In this room, only councillors Fuller and Stevens really knew him during that time, and I'm sure they will recall that he was in many ways very similar to me, never afraid to speak up, a bear with a sore head at times, but also someone who could be kind, someone who put his family, friends and community first, and someone like me, after Right to Buy, who was keen to see more islanders have the chance of a social housing home when they could not afford house buying. In 2000, he was delighted to be elected as Millennium Vice Chair of the Council. Would have loved to have been Chair the following year, but the political makeup of the Council at that time prevented this. This is ironic when he considered later how much I hated being elected Chair myself 5 years ago. After he left here, he was then elected with me to Newport Parish Council for Pan Barton for 9 years, before eventually retiring 8 years ago. I always kept in touch with Tony and his wife Greta after his retirement, and I was very sad when Greta advised me of his death just before Christmas. Councillors like Tony work to build community. He was an example of what public service should be about. Get that message, please, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wording. As I said before, I'm sorry for your loss. I'd like to open the floor up to any other councillors that have any words of reflection. Councillor Fuller, Paul.
So many memories with Tony. Tony and I served on the planning committee together, and we were both quite uncomfortable in our mentor. Barbara Foster, as some of us will remember, had decided to go and mentor both myself and Tony at one time, and I think we both respected the lady, but sometimes some of the views didn't really flow with what me and Tony felt about things, and myself and Tony would often have a bit of a laugh to one another about what we were expected to do. But Tony was a lovely man, absolutely lovely, and I think one of the things that I remember with Tony is he was not he never came across as being very political. He was a friend to many councillors, and a lot of times you could share a joke, share a drink with him, and regardless of your background and your viewpoints, he would always make time for you. And that was what I loved about Tony, and this is why I understand why Tony was so popular in his ward in Pan, because he would always have the time of day to be able to put the needs of his residents first. And I'm very sad to hear of his passing. He was a very good man to be with, and really sad to hear of his passing. And I would have loved to have stayed for his funeral, except his funeral was 40 minutes before my dad's. So it was a eventful that day, but really sad. We lost 2 people in a very short period of time, and really my fondest wishes go out to his wife and his family, who stood by him in his work. So yeah, God bless you, Tony.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller, and my condolences to your loss as well. Councillor Price, Matthew.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've known Tony a very long time, and but I only ever served with him on Newport Parish Council, and we worked closely together on many things. Tony was one of those councillors in his time on the parish council that he always worked tirelessly for things that were on people's doorsteps. It was things out in your street that Tony would be dealing with. And he'd often be ringing me about things in my ward. We didn't represent the same ward, obviously. And he'd often be talking to me and give me heads up for things in my ward. And like many councillors that I've worked with from all different political persuasions, gave me a lot of advice and a lot of steering in the right direction. And, you know, we really have truly lost a great man. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Lever, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't know Tony on the Isle of Wight Council. I knew Tony as my fellow ward councillor on Newport and Carisbrook Community Council. Tony was already in place when I first came on that council, and I just remember he was very kind and very encouraging and supportive of myself. So I'm always grateful for that when I was just starting out as a councillor. We did a lot of things around the ward. I remember a litter pick on the Victoria Rec, which Tony did less of the litter picking and more of the overseeing, but it was a good day out. Even after Tony had come off Newport Council, he'd always give me a call on New Year to wish me a happy New Year. So I always appreciate that, and he was a kind man. And so very sad news, and my thoughts go out to his family and friends.
Thank you, Councillor Lever. Councillor Stevens, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I was unwell and couldn't attend Tony's funeral. But I always remember walking into the council many, many moons ago. I think it was 2001. And to be greeted by a very big man in stature, but physically, he was something else. And I really took to him. He was Labour through and through, as Councillor Brodie said. He was a trade unionist. He was good old Labour. The Labour that you remember is a Labour for the people and for the worker. And that's why I think that I came into the Isle of Wight Council. I was a former trade unionist as a BT engineer years ago. So I had that sort of a little bit of understanding that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And as everyone who's spoken so far mentions, he was a mentor. He was good. He gave you guidance, but he gave you guidance in such a way that you weren't being talked at, you were being spoken to. And that was one thing that Tony had. And I had the privilege to meet Mark, his son. I had a large transit van, and it had to have an MOT. And Mark Coburn was the only one within the area that could actually do these MOTs. And I drove up to Mark Coburn's garage, parked the van there, and was speaking to Mark when suddenly, booming voice from behind me, and it was Tony. Once again, both within council and outside of council, is always the same. And I'm not going to say it's and sound pie that he was a friend. I'll tell you what, he was a very, very good person who would treat everyone as an equal and take everything forward in the most positive way, even when the negatives were around. And I think in the early 2000s, council tax at that time was booming on the Isle of Wight. We were cracking into quite high council taxes. And when that administration moved on and another administration moved in, they had a terrific amount of money in their reserves, whichever reserve you're going to talk about. But that was the time. So Tony, I always remember as a guy that would tell the truth and a guy that would stick by his opinion. And I'm going to leave it at that. But one of the saddest things at the back end of the year was that I couldn't attend his funeral, which I really wanted to attend. But thank you, Jeff, for that tribute to him. I think that Tony's looking down and saying, thank you, thanks, Jeff, for bringing this forward. To me, as I say, a man to be remembered, and the actions and the abilities that he had also to be remembered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens, and to all other members for your lovely words of reflection. We move on to agenda item number 1, which is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of November. So I move that and seek a seconder, please. Councillor Blake, thank you. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Just take a couple of seconds to sign these. Councillor Stevens, do you mind switching off your microphone, please? Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 2. Excitedly ahead of myself, which is declarations of interest. Just reminding members, there is a general dispensation in place to allow councillors to discuss and determine the members' allowance scheme. So asking members wish to, if you've got any interest to declare, stating their nature of the interest and the item on the agenda to which it relates, please. Super, nothing to declare. Right, we move on to public questions, and 2 written public questions have been received. The first one from Miss H. Wagstaff. Miss Wagstaff, are you with us this evening? Councillor Ward, you're down to reply to this, so if I read it out, Miss Wagstaff's question will be heard. Let's do it. Written question from Miss H. Wagstaff to Councillor Jones Evans, who is not with us this evening. The question is, in light of the March 2024 Military Road Current Transport Assessment, which concludes that the inland diversion route via Bryston Village, Motterston and Brook Village Road has sufficient capacity and no greater inherent accident risk than other island roads, based largely on existing data, assumptions about driver compliance and plans for post-closure monitoring, has the Isle of Wight Council considered conducting a controlled, time-limited trial closure of sections 14 and 15 during peak summer conditions, such as a short period in August to collect real-world data on actual traffic flows, including HGVs and tourist volumes, congestion levels, road traffic accident risks, community impacts and safety issues on the diversion route. Such a trial would enable better preparation and implementation of targeted mitigation measures if central government funding for long-term rerouting or stabilisation cannot be secured. What practical, safety or logistical barriers would need to be addressed to implement this responsibly? Councillor Ward, please.
Firstly, thank you to Ms. Wagstaff for her questions, and thank you for reading it out, Chairman. The Council has a responsibility to ensure the safe and expeditious movement of traffic wherever possible, taking into account that disruption will be caused by road closures or traffic control to facilitate maintenance, road maintenance, utility company assets. Temporary closures can be for the purpose of public safety, e.g. an emergency or proximity to roadworks or construction. Closing a road to determine the impact of the surrounding network is not a lawful reason to close a road. Therefore, the council cannot consider this. The impact of closure on surrounding routes can be modelled and assessed through replacement of temporary traffic data cameras and sensors. These can be commissioned for an agreed period of time and will provide accurate multimodal traffic data that can provide insights into movements, speeds, turning behaviour, near-miss incidents, traffic flow and more. This data would then be used for the development of the business case for the network resilience of the military road and the wider area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward, and a very worthy question as well. Question number 2 is a written question from Mr. M. Lewis. Mr. Lewis, are you? No. Right, so I shall read that on your behalf, and this is going to Councillor Claire Mosdell. In light of the need for council cutbacks, can the council please confirm the monitoring and auditing processes in place to ensure that paid care visits by carers and personnel assistants match the actual time carried out, including the specific checks performed to verify that carers and PAs attend for the full contracted visit duration? How inaccuracies between recorded claimed hours and actual on-site time are identified and investigated? What evidence is required from providers / carers to prove that visits occurred? what remedial actions are taken if a provider or carer is found to be regularly undelivering contracted time, and how clients or family members can report any shortfalls. Councillor Mosdell.
Thank you. Paid for care visits are funded through adult social care generally by two routes. Those that are directly commissioned by the Isle of Wight Council, either through the prime provider or directly with another provider, and those with direct payment personal budget, direct payment, where the individual commissions them directly. Both are subject to regular audit and care reviews. Currently, approximately 6,700 hours of support each week is provided through personal assistance, and 9,600 hours of support per week provided through prime providers and their subcontractors. Due to the large number of hours, it's not possible for the council to ensure that each and every hour is delivered in accordance with the support plan. We do, however, have measures in place to support with oversight and assurance, such as through the commissioning team and quality assurance framework, which combined data and information through multiple sources such as safeguarding, quality assurance team and commissioning team visits, CQC, professional visit reports, provider self-assessments and data sources information. Direct payments are audited from a financial perspective through the direct payments team. These services commissioned by the council have to be receipted and reconciled on the council's payment system known as Horizon. Any abnormalities identified through these processes are addressed with the provider, whether it be an agency or a personal assistant. Any concerns arising are escalated to the commissioning and social work teams to undertake a review. Those drawing on care and support through council funding are reviewed by our social work teams a minimum of annually. Reviews of the individual, including current support being received and how that is working for the individual, including reviews of care recording as appropriate. These scheduled and any unscheduled reviews are an opportunity to discuss any issues in care provision, and this can be addressed by the relevant team. Although the council have these measures in place, the council are more often alerted to incidents by the individual, their family and friends, and where they feel there is a gap in what should be being provided and what is actually being provided. Other sources also include visiting professionals and other support services where they have been informed or suspect there is a discrepancy. In such cases, these are escalated to the social work and commissioning team, who will undertake a review to investigate the situation. Sometimes where there is a potential risk to the individual, this may also be through the safeguarding team. This would include the provider or PA to provide documented evidence of the care and support provided. It is expected that dates and times will be included as part of this care recording. Where the investigation identifies there has been a shortfall in support, this is addressed directly with the provider or the PA. In cases where this is deemed to be regularly underperforming, if this was through a commissioned agency, this would be acted upon as part of the contract management process, and if no improvement will ultimately result in that contract being ended. If it was a PA via a PA, this would result in them being removed from the council PA notice board. If people feel that the care calls are not fulfilling the contractual time on site, they should contact the provider head office in the first instance. If it is provided by an agency. If the agency does not address this with their carer, or it is an independent carer, they can contact adult social care to raise their concerns so we can initiate our own review and investigation. I hope that answered that thoroughly.
I think you did, Councillor Mosdell. Yes, I think you certainly did. And thank you once again for the question. Item number 4 are announcements from the chair, leader and head of paid service. Well, I'll go first. I haven't done anything. No, only joking. Going back to our last meeting, I was asked to present the Duke of Edinburgh Awards at Network Ride in Ryde. And I have to say, although I'm very biased, it is the jewel in Ryde Town Council's crown. It is a phenomenal location for youth provision and services, and it was great fun. Caught on the hop, wasn't asked to do, there was no brief, so you went in there in front of 100 or so people, not knowing what to talk about, and it was great fun. And an amazing bunch of youngsters who were engaged in an incredibly difficult and arduous set of tasks sometimes on Duke of Edinburgh. So that was great. The Lights of Love service at the crematorium. First of all, a big tip of the hat to Isle of Wight Council's bereavement team. They do an incredible piece of work there. And I described it not so much publicly, but to some of the staff as it being theatre, in so much as it just happens. Everything just happens. You don't notice it. It's such a smooth and respectful process. And having spent a fair bit of time in the crematorium over the last couple of years, I cannot emphasize enough how appreciated that team are. On a Sunday, I came into the office to go through the Christmas cards, which were fantastic. As we know, this was the winner. Look at that little cat, and if you look close, it's got a reflection in the bauble. Yes. I was then absolutely treated to go and meet Ella and the team at Wroxall Primary School. Mark, what a great school. It's epic, isn't it? Yes. This was one of my other favourites too. Look at that. Art is subjective, is it not? But that was from Mason, and I ended up in Gatton and Lake. I want to frame that, careful. I had to go to Gatton and Lake, didn't have to, I went to, and what an incredible school there. And at Gatton and Lake, I was invited and took part in, first for the chair, probably, I don't know about you, Carl, but classroom karaoke. Have you indulged in anything as fun as that? Dancing around, it was brilliant. Any of the chairs? No? Oh, another first. It was brilliant and made a complete burk of myself. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Wroxall, I was greeted by Daisy the dog. They've got a dog in the school. Are you aware of that, Mark? Yeah. It's great, isn't it? Every school should have one. There we go. There was a citizenship ceremony in there for good measure, and that is always enjoyable to do. And only recently, the Youth Council were present here in the chamber. We got some of the members up there. Good evening, Youth Council, to Naomi and Toby. They're present this evening, and I'd like to thank them for their excellent work and inviting me in for a thoroughly grilling session as well. That was really, really good. And I'd like to tip my hat to Vice Chair for the engagements that she's been on as well. That really is it from me. I'll hand you over to the leader.
Thank you, Chair. One of these days I'm going to go first because it's always upbeat when you talk to us. And it's great to hear some of the stuff you do. Getting lost around the island, isn't it, from time to time? And then we come to me and it's more serious stuff because that's what I do, more serious stuff on behalf of this council. And on behalf of all of you and on behalf of all the residents. But so three very quick things for me, and by no means the only things that I do, but they're kind of current. So I met with a minister in London yesterday about power infrastructure on our island. Many of you know about it, some don't. But the upshot of it is that this island is being held back from its growth and from its economy because we are at or very close to capacity on the grid on our island, number one. And number two, because we have 3 connecting cables with the mainland that are also at capacity. So the purpose of this was to, a meeting with the minister, was to, with SSEN as well, who were in the room, was to ask for some urgency in upgrading the grid and a 4th connecting cable. Suffice to say that we achieved the usual government minister response, which is not very much, but the SSEN were looking at this from 2028, 3 years hence, and it will probably be 5 to 10 years before they get into doing anything. And the catch-22 is SSEN require us to demonstrate as an island the demand for the extra capacity before they put it in. So you might say, you know, it's just a circular argument. My argument to the minister was, Minister, we need the infrastructure in place. Then people will come, we will grow, we'll build extra homes where we have to, in the right place for the right homes. We will roll out net zero aspirations, car charging, and we will talk about the ferries that also want to consider hybrid or electric crossing. So all of that needs to be looked at and will be, but I'm disappointed that it's at least 3 to 5 years hence. So I think there's some work for this council to do, officer wise, to pull together, perhaps regionally even, to pull together a demand ask of SSEN to step up their speed on that. On LGR, we're still waiting for the government decision. The latest is March, due in March. Don't bank on it being in March. Nothing else thus far has been on time. But just to reiterate, as you know, because I've tried to keep you up to date on letters in and letters out from government, that we and our Solent partners, that's Hampshire, Southampton and Portsmouth, have indicated to government that they do not want to delay local elections. So that's very clear. I would just say that there has been some, not necessarily in the minds of any of you, but there has been some confusion that government have generated in wrapping up LGR and devolution once again, so that local elections, government asked those authorities, those local councils who wanted to delay their elections. And there was a number, I think it was perhaps 20 councils wanted to do that, but it was for local government reorganisation and nothing to do with devolution directly. The point about that is, as you all know, that we intend not to be reorganising under local government reorganisation. We intend to stay as we are, and therefore, of course, there's absolutely no reason for us anyway to delay elections. So we're pushing ahead, waiting for government to tell us what their decision is on that. And then finally on devolution, you now know that, and I sent a letter around this afternoon. Forgive me, it came yesterday, I was in London, but I sent it around as soon as I could. It's a revised offer from government relating to the delays to devolution for the mayoral elections, which are now scheduled for 2028. Now, in the Solent area, Hampshire ourselves, Southampton, Portsmouth are ready. We did the work. We joined that priority programme. Our officer team right across the region created the space, the constitution, the background working to create an authority, a combined authority. Government have decided that they prefer to do it later on rather than earlier on. So they've revised their offer, and their offer now is that devolution elections 2028, not 2026. They will increase capacity funding to us by £1 million over the offer of £1 million a year for 3 years. So that's £500,000 for 2 years extra. And then finally, they've offered us 1/3 of the original funding amount. I can convey to you that that hasn't gone down terribly well with any of the other areas, Southampton, Portsmouth and Southampton, or myself. And the very latest on this is that we have a very urgent meeting with the Minister in the morning at 10:15, where we, without civil servants, just the Minister and 4 leaders, and we will be telling the Minister what we think of her offer. So I will keep you updated on outcomes of that and any future decisions or revisions on their offer. That's me finished, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Moving on to agenda item number 5, which is the report of the monitoring officer, approval of members' allowance scheme 2026. Mr. Potter, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a report which members receive each year. There's a requirement to approve your members' allowance scheme running from the 1st of April to the 31st of March for the relevant year. You have before you the recommendations of the Independent Remuneration Panel set out in Appendix 1, and the report itself, I believe, is self-explanatory. But if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
So looking for someone to move this motion, please. Councillor Garrett, thank you.
Well, it does need to be moved. Councillors should be remunerated. That's been a position in local government since 1974, then subsequent revisions. 1991, I think, was the first year in which there was the idea of a basic allowance to all councillors. If we are to have diversity in this chamber, and we are not a diverse chamber, then we need to recognise that there are financial implications to being a locally elected representative of the people, something that was done for members of parliament something like 100 years ago. So there is that recognition that service comes with cost, and that cost is financial as much as anything else. One of the recommendations is to formally thank the Independent Remuneration Panel. They have done a great deal of work. I filled out both their questionnaire and engaged in a very lengthy conversation with one of their members, with giving my own thoughts about the allowance scheme. I made some certain comments, having now become deputy leader of the council, about the ratio of that allowance to that of the leader. More in the favour of the leader than of the deputy leader, my comments were, because I am acutely aware of just how much work that the leader of the council does for this authority, even under the system that we now have, as indeed do all our committee chairs and vice chairs and all of those who are remunerated in this way. Speaking personally, I am a self-employed person. I'm keeping a record this year of every time I have to cancel work in order to deliver my local government responsibility. It is not because I want to make a particular financial claim in some way, but to allow, if I remain on this council, some data for the next independent remuneration panel review to say this is actually how it affects those of us who are self-employed, and self-employed people have to think in terms of earning their income after tax and national insurance, and also contribute to their pension and things like that. If we are to allow more people like myself who are self-employed to come onto a council, we have to recognise that there is a true opportunity cost for those. For those in work, there may well be. Not all employers provide for paid time off in order to do local government work. It is a difficult decision, though, basically to reward ourselves, but it is right that we follow, in my view, what an independent panel has concluded. Any member who is uncomfortable with that can, of course, renounce their allowance. I renounce now my travel allowance. I very much have recognised that I live too close to County Hall to justify being given £40 a month to walk down many times from where I live. But it is not something that all of us will be in that situation to do. And others may speak about, of course, the way in which this allowance scheme, whilst it will affect us for a month, is actually going to be something that extends to a cohort of councillors who, some of us may be here, some of us may not be, even though we may wish to continue. So we need to be thinking about those who follow on after May the 7th elections this year. So I do move. I understand that it's not popular for people to see us essentially rewarding ourselves, but it is in response to an independent review, and I think it is only right and proper that we endorse that view. So I so move, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Garrett, and we require a seconder, please. Thank you very much, Councillor Stewart. The first question comes from Councillor Mosdell.
Thank you. And I just want to check that Councillor Jarman's going to bring up something that he showed to me the other day. I don't want to steal your thunder on the 40% bit. You're good. Okay, I won't mention that bit. I'll mention the other bit. So I just really want to say that, can you just all remember, you are not voting to pay yourself this. There's a high chance most of you aren't going to get re-elected anyway, because the political landscape at the moment, you might have worked your asses off, but that's okay. But I just think that, there is going to be a real change of colour in this chamber. However, can you all remember that you are not voting to pay this to yourselves? In May, there will be a new cohort of councillors here. In May, there are new dreadfully difficult challenges. I am really glad that I'm not standing again, because actually it's been a very difficult 9 years, and it financially is going to get practically impossible. You need to make sure that people are recommended to get people with a skill set in here to actually ride this storm and be able to work together to help support this council. You do not want to have a council just filled with retired people who've got nothing better to do with their time. That's no insult to anybody who's retired or anything like that, but we need diversity across this chamber. I'll never forget sitting in a council chamber when one of our councillors had to use a food bank. It wasn't there? And you just think you need to actually make sure that actually people do have compensation for what they're giving up to do what is a really difficult at times job. So just remember that, please. And it's independent. You didn't all think this up. And whatever happens, you'll read below the line. You know, I've had 9 years of reading below the line in the media, and we're either getting a brown envelope or we're getting this or getting that. But this job, if you do it right, is hard work. And you should have the right people doing it, and they should have some financial recompensation for doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morstel. Councillor Jarman, first of all, compliments on that tie. I'm right in front of you. It's nice. Well, well, lovely. Carry on, Chris.
Speak now so as not to embarrass you. It has been my long-term held view, and it remains the case, and I know that it's not universally held, that I believe councillors should be full-time, appointed as such, and remunerated as such, so that they can spend the fullest amount of time representing the residents who elect them. That's my view. I do have a problem with the proposal that we have today, and that is that we are all acutely aware of the difficulty this council faces financially, and the burden of that difficulty will not fall to the councillors who are here. It will probably not fall unduly to the councillors who are here in a few months' time. That burden will fall to all the residents and businesses on this island. And there's an old parable which, if I translate it slightly, talks about a guest who arrives for dinner, and on the table he realizes there is very little fare, and he has to make a moral judgment. Is it right for him to heap his own plate fuller, knowing that the others on the table who are hungry will have even less as a result? Now that's a moral element, and I know that we are supposed to look at these things in a more intellectual way. But for me, this is a moral question. Is it right in the times of great strife, when this council will undoubtedly be cutting services to those in greatest need on this island, for us to heap our plates fuller? Every member here can reflect on that, and I trust they will while we continue this discussion. I do, however, have one specific question, which I would refer to the monitoring officer, and it relates to page 27, Item 13, Appendix 1, Paper 1 of the monitoring officer. It could be that other members did not notice this particular paragraph, but it contains an interesting distraction. It refers to the fact that the amount which is calculated by the independent panel is discounted by some 40% in terms of what is proposed, because of what is termed a public service discount. Notably, that effectively there are greater non-financial rewards of the role, carrying perhaps more social standing and kudos than be found in other regions' cities. I don't quite understand the reference to other region cities, given we're an island. I certainly don't like the word kudos, and I don't understand why the total, if calculated and agreed by an independent panel, is then reduced by 40% for that benefit. That is my question, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Jarman. That is the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel, which has been presented, so I'm not in a position to comment. Thank you.
We can also ask him for clarification, Councillor Jarman. We'll pass that message on. Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I seem to have lost my voice sitting next to the lady with a cough, which is probably welcome to some people. Anyway, I always vote for the independent report. It's something that it essentially government imposes upon us an independent report. And I frankly don't think we have any choice, but I don't make that decision as an individual. I make it as a decision for the future, because as Councillor Garrett referred to, I remember doing as part of my history A level, the debates in Parliament about paying MPs, which I think was under a Liberal government before the First World War. That's some history for you. The Liberal government, Goyle was. But, you know, and the arguments from the Conservatives at that time, you know, that this was appalling. But of course, that allowed ordinary folk, middle class and particularly working class folk, to start being able to stand for Parliament. Similar happened in 74 in local government, where allowances were provided for people from working backgrounds rather than self-employed business, etc., etc. And the nature of councils started to change across many parts of the country. When I stood back in 2005, I worked full time. I was in my 40s, believe it or not. And it was an important element of my decision to stand and replace Tony Coburn, who I talked about earlier on, because I had a good employer who would allow me to work part-time hours, and I reduced my working week by exactly the equivalent of what my allowance was, so I made no money. Since I retired, I use most of my allowance in donations to other organisations, charitable organisations, etc. And people are aware I'm very involved in a charity within my ward. You know, so I do use it usefully. I'd rather it was directed in that way. I will vote for this tonight, but I just want to make one comment here. I don't know how many hours people put into this. I calculate that on an average week, I do a minimum of 25 hours a week as a councillor, minimum. I represent a ward that's very demanding. Maybe you don't, I do, very demanding ward. And obviously, you know, if you're on committees, etc., I'm not anymore, but you know, that builds it up as well. 25 hours a week. I read something online once that it shouldn't be paid any more than the minimum wage. The minimum wage from April is £12.71 an hour. If you do, let's say 20 hours, not my 25, you do 20 hours over a week, that works out at £10.40 an hour. That is less than 70% of what there's less than 80%, sorry, of what the living wage is. You know, so you're not exactly overpaying yourself when you do it. But this is about encouraging people into the council, and I hope you'll support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Knight, Bill.
Hi, thank you. I'm in a rather invidious position of finding myself actually agreeing with Councillor Brodie. And I think he's absolutely right. Personally speaking, and it's not about personal, personalities or anything, but I have likewise reduced my working day by 2 days a week at the Steam Railway to allow me to do the extra hours for this. And I'm, state pensioner and all the rest of it. And I think he's absolutely right.
Thank you, Bill. Councillor Love, Carl.
Thank you, Chair. I think we often do ourselves a huge disservice as councillors. We don't explain in an absorbed way to the general public just what it is that we do, apart from sit in this chamber here. I know that I spend, and I'm saying 40 hours plus a week doing work in different ways, because there's lots of different ways that we do this work. I mean, we had 200 and, I forgot the exact number, 93, was it? Pages to read in 5 days. And that's just one document. It is, for me, a full-time job, and everybody puts into it what they can as councillors. But I don't think that we actually spend enough time explaining to the general public just what it is that they're getting in terms of value. I absolutely agree, although I found myself in two camps on this occasion, that
young people find it incredibly difficult to become a counsellor because it's not paid. And if they're trying to get on in life, you know, what does £1,000 a month, which it isn't on the basic, is it? It's not £1,000 a month buying today. It doesn't pay your rent for your house. It doesn't buy your utilities or anything else. It's almost impossible for a young person, even if they have a very high level of skill, to become a counsellor. And the same for single parent families and others. I couldn't do this job without this payment. There's no doubt about it, because I'm lucky I have a partner that supports me. Other people don't have that. So we either let the role become the role of the bourgeois, who have the finances to be able to do this, or the retired. And that's not a complaint about retired people. It was nearly always traditionally an occupation for the retired, because it's the only way you can find the time to do it and manage families and other things. So I'm finding this is extremely difficult, because we are in a time of incredible cost of living crisis out there, and the general public will see no further than the headlines that are written, generally speaking, and they will think that it's just another jolly for us as councillors. And I accept that it is difficult. This council does not have a lot of money, and it looks, quite frankly, wrong, doesn't it, to award ourselves more money at this time. But without it, this chamber would be largely empty, because there just wouldn't be the people to do it. And we already find it difficult for councillors. That's why it's great to see you young people here. Hopefully one day you'll be sat here alongside of us. So I'm finding it very, very difficult, I must admit, tonight to decide what to do for that reason.
Thank you very much, Councillor Love. Councillor Stewart, you seconded this. There's no one else that wishes to speak. No, Councillor Stevens says. You can come in whenever. Yeah, come on, Councillor Stevens, get on in there.
I think I'm going to be outnumbered here by view of what's been put before from other council members. We're in terrible times, desperate times. You've just heard from the leader about, once again, a lessened amount for this local authority. The money that comes into this authority that boosts our services, or brings our services along. And we've got officers online and within this chamber that work damn hard to keep that level of service up to the optimum that they possibly can. For us at this moment in time, to actually turn around and say, well, they're saying we should have that, so why not? Why can't we have it? Or why shouldn't we have it? Or let's give it to ourselves, is possibly not the right time. There are certain times within a financial climate you can actually say yes, which I have done in the past. And there are times when you can actually draw back and say, hold on, we've got a new council term coming up in May, and we have a hard budget to bring forward. We have to make allowances if we're going to take this forward, as you appreciate, to make sure that we can cover what we need to cover. And we've got some hard, and people within the committee that I serve realise that we've got some hellish decisions to make this coming financial year. It's coming over the hill at us. Be prepared. In a moment, you're going to be talking on another agenda item, which is, I'll read it out to you, wherever it is. It's 6B, and it's the local council tax support scheme. And you'll all be talking about that in a minute. You can't have it always. And I'm one of these people that say I can handle it at this time, and I can handle the amount of money that I've got. Love to see new faces in this chamber. Love to see a fresh enthusiasm coming in. But it's up to you. You've got decisions to make. I'm afraid that I can't go along with the recommendations. I'm going to step back and say we've got bigger fish to fry this year. local council tax support scheme, other elements within council and elements of service. You make a choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor Stevens. Councillor Fuller. Oh,
Deja vu, back in the same place as I have been in many years, and I've always spoken about the issues with increasing councillors' allowances. A few years ago, on my annual report, oh dear, somebody's calling me. Apologies for that. A few years ago, I put on my annual report about how much money I actually earn as a Isle of Wight councillor. And first couple of years, people said, "Do you earn that much? Do you earn that much? You should be ashamed of yourself." But in recent years, when I've been putting it on my annual report, and I've said, "Well, this is the view that I take. I will not support an increase in my allowance, because I said when I stood for council first time round, I would not support an increase in allowances." I've had residents come to me and saying, "Do you really earn that little? You're always there. You're always out. If somebody contacts me, you're always on the phone to somebody else trying to resolve issues." And, and I know I'm not the only one. We all work our socks off for our community, and we all deserve the allowance that we get. I know of very few councillors that don't give value of money for their communities. At the end of the day, we work for 2 days a week, and I know that most people around these tables work for a lot longer than that. First thing you get telephone call on Sunday morning. I got a couple of calls this year at Christmas Day wanting support. One person was surprised I picked up the phone at 8:30 on Christmas Day, and they put the phone straight down afterwards, and I thought it was an emergency. So I kept on calling them back, kept on messaging them back, saying, "I'm guessing this is an emergency. How can I help you?" Never came back to me. So this is what we do. We are at people's beck and call 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. So I can understand why people will support the increase. However, year after year, I always vote against it, because I feel that I would do it no matter what the salary was, because I love doing the job that I'm benefiting from doing. When I was chair of a parish council, I did that for absolutely nothing. And we have a lot of unsung heroes. We have a lot of volunteers out there who never get remunerated. And I want to pay tribute to those people as well. So regrettably, I will not be voting for an increase this year, although I was tempted for a minute.
surprised you picked up your phone this evening, Paul, but there we go. Presumably pay as you go. I'm just going to add a little bit of a wild card into this. I'm a father. I've got 2 youngsters, little monkeys, 5 and 8. I couldn't do this and the other elements that I get involved with without some sort of remuneration. It would just be absolutely impossible. But you don't know that until you get into it. It's like the Wizard of Oz. You peek behind the curtain and then you see him there slapping it. Wait, you get into the role and you realise how much needs doing. And especially if the ward that you're representing has fallen by the wayside or needs some work, or certain engagements haven't happened. And you've picked up the baton, you've got to run with it. It's like Ian and I, we signed on the dotted line in the forces. You've got to commit to it or don't do it at all. And that's it. And that's the gig. And so bringing up 2 little children, I can't speak for Councillor Lee or actually for Joe before he was MP, but I couldn't do it because managing the work-life balance, a lot of stuff for me, the correspondence gets done on an evening. I put my hand up for Armed Forces Day like an idiot, thinking, oh, that'll be quite simple. It's not. And it takes about 5 or 6 hours for approximately 2 months to get that done. I don't get remunerated for that, but I volunteered for it and I do it because I want to try and bring the veteran community, the armed forces community together for something that we haven't had in a reasonably successful level, and also to help us inspire and bring some positivity to a lot of youngsters on the island that see the Solent as a boundary, and in many ways it is, but the world is out there. You see the people flying around and doing different things. Perhaps the forces is an opportunity. And I see that as a youth engagement too. And I love doing radio bits with youngsters and getting involved in Network Ride. But it's when you get involved in this, when you see it and the doors open and you've got this position, it's not a position of power, it's a position of privilege. But by getting involved, you can add value to that. And Carl will tell you, and anybody else that's been in this chair, the workload, if you choose it to be, in terms of engagement, is colossal. And it's incredibly fun, and you can actually bring some positives to it as well. Prepping for this sort of stuff it takes a lot of time too. I couldn't do it as a father. I absolutely couldn't, and I would still want to do it as well. So I just thought I'd bring a view as a parent from that point. Councillor Stewart, you were next in line as the seconder, I believe.
I think the eloquence is very clear here, and the public service element is why we are here. But the fact is that without some sort of allowance, a lot of us would find it very, very difficult to do the role that we want to do. I think it is important, and my colleague, Councillor Garrett, has made clear how far back this goes. It is very important to bring into this chamber a diverse group of people from across the island. And without this type of support, you will not get that. I would urge you to fully support this report and vote for what the independent remuneration panel has suggested.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I think we're all said and done on the comments. Councillor Garrett, you, as the mover, you have right to reply.
Chair, briefly to say, it has been refreshing to have a discussion around this. There've been a wide variety of views around this, but a recognition ultimately that the public service role that we give and that we would hope others would also do, of whatever political party and none, that it is not insignificant. It is significant. My number of hours is broadly that as a ward councillor of Councillor Brodie, having become deputy leader, it has significantly added to my workload. I regularly finish just after midnight, finishing up on things. That's my own personal sob story. I don't want to worry about that. What I don't want is to find that the person that I was in 1991 when I was 24 and first elected to a council says, no, that's not for me. I can't afford to do that early in my career. That we need to recognise that actually, yes, there is a financial cost to us. If we do it right, we do have to set a significant amount of time aside. Those who are in work, dropping hours, as Councillor Nye has set out, those who, like myself, self-employed, the opportunity costs and actual cancellations of work, whatever. So we have to have that, and we have to be able to say to those who will put their names forward for May this year that financially you should not be challenged by taking upon the role if you are successful. I think that is enough said. I think now we can move to a vote.
I heartily concur, Councillor Garrett, and thank you for your eloquent words. All those in favour of the recommendations? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Carried, thank you. We move on to agenda item 5B, Communications Protocol and Constitution Update. The MO is to introduce the report. Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a report which, again, is largely self-explanatory. The main elements is that there's a recommendation from the Audit and Governance Committee that the revised communication protocol, which is set out in the Appendix 1 to the report, be approved, adopted for inclusion in the Constitution. And the second element of the report is obviously to note, as it states, that progress on the post-implementation review of the Constitution be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris. Councillor Spink, as Chair of Ordnance and Governance Committee, it would be appropriate for you to put the motion, I'm told.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to propose the motion that we support the recommendation which has just been read out. Thank you. I don't need to address the chamber.
Short and sweet. Do you have a second, Councillor Spink? You do. It's Councillor Garrett is straight out the traps. We can put it to the floor for discussion if anybody wishes to comment. Councillor Bacon, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. This is one coming possibly from Pedant's Corner, but on page 44 of our bundle, section 5.248, I note the amended version, which now asks the team to provide 4 hours notice prior to issuing a release. I see what is being sought to be achieved there, and as a result, should it not read 4 working hours notice? Because obviously you could put out a sense, just hypothetically, a series of releases could be given to councillors at 6 o'clock one evening and published at 8 o'clock the next morning. I don't think that's quite the sense of what is being sought to be achieved here.
Councillor Spink, would you like to come back on that? I think it's just a point of clarification, really. That's what you're looking for, isn't it, Jonathan?
I'm still thinking about that.
I'm just saying it says
Yes.
4 hours, being
Yes.
any four hours in any 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I would accept that amendment.
Can we accept that as an amendment? Is that? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Spink, yes, it's just changing the wording of the motion. Thank you. I just needed clarification on that. Thank you. Have we got any other comments or people that wish to, members that wish to feed into this evening? Should we go straight to the vote then? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That was short and sweet, Councillor Spink. Good. Right, 5C, nominations and appointments, and Councillor Mosdell has caught my eye. Claire.
Councillor Mosdell has caught your eye, and thank you ever so much. So I just want a little bit of indulgence. I have checked with that I can do this with all group leaders and with non-aligned councillors, and I have checked with the vice chair of Adult Social Care, Public Health and Housing Needs Committee, and as such I am going to resign with immediate effect as the chair of that committee, and I'm going to nominate somebody who I've spoken with Councillor Redrup and actually other chairs of committees, because I think credit should be credit where credit is due, and the councillor I want to nominate has worked so hard on every committee that they have been on. They've really embraced the committee system, whether they agree with it and think it's working properly or not, but they have really embraced it. There is one last committee left, and I think it would be, you know, the right thing to do to ask if this person would step up and be chair. So thank you for your indulgence, and I would like to nominate Councillor Debbie Andre to become the chair of Adult Social Care Committee, and I'd like you to all move to the vote if that is possible.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mosdell. First of all, Debbie, do you accept the nomination? Take your time.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Mosdell for her very kind words. I have to admit, this has come as a little bit of a shock. But I'm absolutely delighted to accept her nomination. Thank you.
Need a second, I believe that's, oh, we've got lots of seconders.
I'm not surprised. It's a cracking idea. Monitor, we just need to adjust our paperwork and the procedure on this. Could you brief us on the background there?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Molstall. Again, this is a familiar report to members. The issue of chairmanship has been mentioned and has been duly accepted the nomination. The only other amendment I'm aware to the printed papers is in relation to the vacancy for the JCM, which I understand you've kindly put forward your name as well. So subject to that, then obviously it's for a councillor to put forward what I would suggest, but you're free to depart, that the appointment set out in Appendix 1 as revised subsequently to this report be approved. But that needs to be a member moving that, seconding and voting. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to move to Councillor Brading to move said motion. Paul.
Yeah, I would like to second the nomination of Councillor Andre to be chair of the Adult Social Care Committee. She has properly, fully embraced cross-chamber working on my Children's Services Committee. And yes, her support has been very welcome. So I'm delighted to second her nomination to take over the chair of Adult Social Care. And it's good that she was surprised for a change rather than new in advance.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brading. Looking to someone to move the motion for the nominations and appointments recommendations, please. Councillor Ward, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Brading, thank you. Any discussion? Fantastic. Let's move straight to the vote. All those in favour? It's off. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's see if you can be as quick, Councillor Jordan. Report of the Chair of the Policy, Finance and Resources Committee. 6A, this is the, first of all, actually, no, it's the Governance Action Plan and plan update.
Thank you, Chair. As we all now know, just a few words on it. I'll take too much time, but the report, as we know, the report was commissioned because concerns were raised originally by statutory officers, and we appointed an independent reviewer, and it was the right decision at the time, and is now. Look, the report's not an attack on individuals or political groups. It's an honest assessment of how we are currently working and where we need to improve. And the findings of that Penn report were uncomfortable in places. And they spoke about behaviour and culture and strained relationship between members and officers and weaknesses in how decisions are made and carried through. And we shouldn't dismiss that. We shouldn't be defensive about it either, because if we want the public to have confidence in this council, then we first must be willing to look at that honestly ourselves. And the Isle of Wight Council, let's repeat this, is not a failing council. It is not a failing council. Got dedicated councillors who've spoken about it just a few moments ago. We've got committed officers and many examples of good practice in this council. But what the report does tell us is that the way we work together, it's not always helping us deliver as well as we might, as well as we could. In some cases, actually, it's holding us back. And the introduction of the committee system has brought challenges that many members have already experienced firsthand as well. Decision making can feel slower. Roles are not always clear, and implementation has not always matched intent. The report does not suggest abandoning that democratic accountability, although we now know that government will return councils to a cabinet system to accompany LGR in due course. What that does say is not about structure alone. That doesn't deliver good governance. Behaviour, clarity and respect matter just as much. But the recommendations in the report, they are practical. They include strengthening standard arrangements, improving training, supporting our statutory officers, and setting clearer expectations for conduct and decision making. And they're not abstract ideas either. They're actions we can, should and must take. So agreeing this report is only the beginning, because the real test will be whether we follow it through, whether we can follow it through. That requires leadership from all of us, from every member in this room. And it will require us to change some of our habits, not just adopt a new process. So as I said, it's not about blame, it's actually about responsibility. We owe it. We owe it to our residents, we owe it to our staff, and we owe it to ourselves to operate in a way that is professional, respectful, and effective. That means listening to advice, challenging appropriately, and remembering that we're all here for exactly the same reason, and that's to serve the Isle of Wight. Now, I'm committed as leader to ensuring the recommendations are taken forward, at least with urgency and with seriousness, and that progress is reported openly back to us. So I ask members here tonight to approach this not as an opportunity, but as an opportunity to reset how we work and to strengthen the council for the challenges ahead. And all the recommendations are in our report. The changes and the implementation are there for you to see. And I look for a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Garrett, would you like to speak now?
I'll reserve my right if necessary.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Councillor Garrett. Open to the floor for discussion. Councillor Spink.
Thank you, Chair. I just like to say I'm not against this report in principle, and I certainly wasn't against the Penn report in principle. But I am concerned that we will be hearing about the need, and most of us have read the need for local authority cuts to our budget. And we may well even be in difficulty, frankly, setting a lawful budget is the tenor of the report. And I wonder if the governance and finance action plan is really necessary in terms of the expenditure, and if it can be justified, or if most of us have read the Penn report, most of us have already started taking action on the Penn report. I don't really see why, for example, I support the concept of the Standards Committee, but isn't the cost is said to be about £100,000, sorry, £1,000. But nevertheless, I would, sorry, it is 100,000. I misread that. It's 100K. Yeah. And presumably that's per year. Presumably that's per year. I don't know, but perhaps someone can answer that. We then have the governance and finance challenges, voluntary improvement board, see draft terms of reference. Well, that's £100,000 per annum for 2 years. I personally can't justify spending £300,000 minimum to put into practice the Penn recommendations. I don't see why, for example, we couldn't simply change the scope of another committee, for example, the Appeals Committee, and it could take place as a standards committee with a minimal amount of training. I think it's frankly a disgrace to waste, and I do think it's a waste, £100,000 on it. And as for the governance and finance challenges, voluntary improvement board, I mean, I've read that and I've read the terms of reference. You know, it's just more policies and strategies upon strategies. I don't think we need it. and we jolly well can't afford it, and I shall be voting against. Unless I will vote for the principle, but unless we are able to make changes to the cost and to therefore to the format of Appendix 1, I will have to vote against. I vote in favour of implementing the Penn report, but I think there's a cheaper and better way of doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Spink. The leader might be able to sum up with some of those answers once we've gone round the room. Have we got anybody else that wishes to comment? Councillor Brading.
I actually agree with most things that Councillor Spink's actually just said. I'm not against the principle of the report, but if it's a voluntary improvement board, surely voluntary means you don't get paid for sitting on it. I sit on quite a few in my role in voluntary boards, but and outside as council as well. So if it's a voluntary improvement board, it shouldn't come with a fee. So I think the £100,000 over £300,000 is something that we could encompass as part of another committee. Might be a better way of dealing with it. It does need addressing. I agree with the principle, as Councillor Spink has said. But I think he's made a good point about another committee might deal with it better and cheaper that way.
The valid point. Appeals is already set up. Councillor Mosdell.
Seriously, the last 4 years we know have been difficult. My dad used to say, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. What at the end of the day, if you pay 600, 700,000 for all these new committees, what actually is the end result? You sit there and you sit in front of a standards committee and then they go, you've been a really naughty boy, you're a really naughty girl, don't do it again. Unless it's actually got some teeth and says you are no longer going to be a councillor or we're going to fine you such and such, it is an absolute waste of time. If people don't know how to behave and be decent, you can put as much money as you want in committees, but it ain't going to go anywhere and it's an absolute waste of money. I agree with putting people's allowances up, and there will be a change of councillors coming through this door, and hopefully they'll all be decent to each other and decent to officers and vice versa. But you don't need 700,000 or 600,000 to go through a load of committees that actually aren't going to do anything at the end of the day, are they? They're going to sit and chat and chat and chat, and nothing will happen. And the people who were badly behaved are going to walk out the door and still be badly behaved. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Mosdell. I've lost my train of thought now. Councillor Brodie. Jeff, there we are.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't disagree a lot at all, really, with Councillor Spink or Councillor Brady or Councillor Mosdell. I wasn't here in November. I'm ambivalent about the Penn report. I understand why he was brought in. I don't know how I would have voted if I had been here, to be honest. But I think we have to reflect on the last 4 years. This is a politically hung council, no overall control. It was in the hands of a small minority for 4 years, and is now has the committee system. I believe that created tensions within the council, just as it did between 2013 when we had a previous minority independent administration. Never the same when there's one party in control. It's much more controlled, to be frank. This is a dying council, effectively. We're all here undemocratically, let's face it. You know, I mean, we should have all stood for election last May. Elections were put off because of local government reorganisation and devolution, and all that's been put off now. There was no reason for those elections to be delayed in retrospect. But we're a dying council seeking to impose financial costs on a future council. Now, earlier on, we heard councillors quibbling about the few grand it's going to cost on members' allowances, which they'll all take, but, you know, quibbling about it, etc. And yet here, it's £600,000, because that standards committee will be there for 4 years, 100 grand a year. The 2 years of 100 grand for the voluntary improvement board. That's 600 grand. And you're quibbling about allowances. We've got a £23 million shortfall, as I understand it, though I'm not on the Policy and Finance Committee anymore. And I dread to think how you're going to balance that budget, how that committee is going to balance that budget when they come out with a draft one. To impose that now, I think is ludicrous. I think we should leave this to see what happens after May the 7th. That by all means, you know, have it as a paper to be brought to the annual council in May. I won't be party to that. You know, you won't have to suffer me here anymore, you know, or quite a lot of us. And some of us are going voluntarily. I suspect, like Claire said earlier on, a lot of you will be going because you're kicked out. But, you know, let's see what happens. Anyway, I will be voting against this because of the figures in Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Stewart, Nick.
Thank you. I didn't think he'd seen me. I appreciate the views that given, but I've sat in this council and I've seen what happened. And the whole point behind the Penn report was because of the issues that this council faces. And unless we control things properly within the council chamber and in our work with officers, and the officers also are engaged in this process, this council will become a failing council. And a failing council will be seen by this government as something that can be got rid of. If we want to retain the authority of the Isle of Wight people, managing Isle of Wight people, then we have to recognise that we have to approach things properly. This is the correct approach. This is a sensible and managed approach. And without this, I would imagine the costs would be an awful lot higher. So I would strongly recommend that we accept this.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Love, Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I read the Penn report with great interest. And one of the first things I did after that, because Mr. Penn actually suggested that this should be done through appeals. He referred to appeals panels who took responsibilities for this in other local authorities. So I'm a bit shocked about the figure of £100,000, and you're absolutely right. I do not see how we could remotely justify that at this time. That's not to say that we should not address this, but we do have existing processes in place, and the appeals panel could, with a little bit of beefing up and some training and support, take on a wider responsibility without a cost attached to it. And that's why I actually wrote straight after to the clerk saying I'd like to set up a meeting to discuss this, to discuss what this might mean, and it didn't happen. And then I wrote again and it still didn't happen. But I think that that's a more logical approach to try and work around and change our systems rather than create more systems for that. But I also think that we are now very close to the end of a term where there will be elections, and it seems more appropriate for me to say this is something that should be perhaps deferred to that panel after in the new year, and that should be tried to be picked up, in my opinion, for no cost through the appeals committee, reworked and reshaped. And I know that takes a little bit of work, but that is my feeling about it at this moment, because, you know, we have just had real difficulty. I had a real difficulty putting my hand up to vote for me to get someone, but yet here we have a cost which is absolutely significant. So I'm not saying that we don't do anything about what it is that we've received. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is not the way, and let's find another way with a zero cost to it. And that's my view on it. So I think I won't be voting for it.
Thank you, Carl. Councillor Bacon, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. I indicated to speak just before Councillor Stewart spoke, and he has said much of what I would say. But I'm going to say it again effectively because I think it bears repetition, because I think the points there were incredibly important. I'll keep it brief though. I think we should all remember that nationwide there's a process of local government reorganisation going on. And councils that are seen as not fit for purpose are not going to continue. If we are seen as not fit for purpose, we can cease to exist. We can become part of a mainland-based authority. And in that vein, if we are seen to be acting against or not supporting measures to make ourselves fit for purpose, we're inviting the chop. We've already made some mistakes. They've been very much highlighted in the Penn report, and the potential consequences of those mistakes have been stated very clearly by Mr. Penn in his report. So, as I say, I'm repeating Nick to some extent, but I think we just need to think of the wider context, think about what is happening in local government at the moment, and we are very much on the radar nationally. People watch what is going on here, see what we're doing, and we should have that very much in mind in decisions we make in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon. Councillor Garrett, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So first, I'd just draw members' attention to the third line of the recommendations. It is not that, for as far as I read it, and unless I've misunderstood, that recommendation is not saying we commit to expenditures as outlined, but that those expenditures be considered as part of the 2026-27 budget, and that process is ongoing. So it's not tonight that we're committing to sums of money, and they are eye-wateringly high sums of money to a great extent, but that they should be considered in the budget setting process. So I hope I have that right. So those who are reticent about supporting something which they otherwise support in principle, you should take comfort from the fact that you're not committing to specific sums as outlined in the appendix, but you're committing to consideration of how that might be achieved. And maybe that's a reconfiguration of how work is done in this place. Colleagues, Councillor Stewart, Councillor Bacon particularly have referenced the phrase failing council. The Penn report has highlighted how we move ourselves away from that road. This report is about the next steps in travelling down that road. It is right that we do it not in a half-assed way, but we do it properly. And this report sets out how we do it in a full-assed way or the none-assed way, one way or the other. Getting my metaphors mixed up on that, but the point is we need to do it properly. So any of the consideration within the budget process needs to be about how do we do this properly, and we do it properly not for ourselves, but for the residents of the Isle of Wight who we are here to serve. Because if we don't get the council working properly, then there will be fallout to that. There will be inefficiencies, ineffectiveness of delivery of service, and that will lead in ultimately to financial cost as well. So there is that. I've heard reference to the voluntary word involuntary improvement board. If I get this right, it is a voluntary improvement board because it has not been statutorily imposed upon us by government saying, actually, Isle of Wight, we think you're failing, we're going to send them in. Send in the commissioners, send in those, impose a board upon us. What we're doing, I feel, in setting up this board is getting ourselves, for once, properly on the front foot. Being able to be ahead of a process, being able to look at ways in which getting expertise from in and from outside and properly looking at the way we deliver service and the costs involved, that we might discover those things that can help mitigate the incredibly bad situation financially that we have. Improvement boards in other councils, as I understand, have helped support that process. In a sense, what you're looking at is an investment in a transformation. And we've always had a transformation reserve on this council to look at ways of investing to save. And I feel it's like that. But again, I'd stress to any colleague who feels they can support the principle but worried about the sums of money, those sums of money are part of the budget setting process.
Okay, I've got a couple more that want to comment on this, and I think Councillor Brodie is scribbling out an amendment as we speak, but I would bring people back to the recommendation on number 8. It's consider the financing of the action plan and voluntary improvement board as part of the budget. So there is wiggle room, there is room for flexibility. I think we're all agreed on the spirit of this. It's just getting round to the finances of it. Councillor Blake was next.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just address that specific point? It's consider the cost in the budget setting. Won't have a chance to amend the policy. It will be a, do we commit to that expenditure, yes or no? Not a chance of redoing that. So I want to clarify that point specifically. In terms of the recommendations, this report, I was under the assumption that a standards committee would, and the other committees proposed, would be an adaptation of our current committees. Certainly, there are some committees that could take on this work that don't currently perform regularly. I'm thinking Carl, can you tell me when the last appeals committee sat? Not that recently, if ever. So, you know, that we do need a standards committee. I think a few of the situations we've had over the past year could have been averted had there been a standards committee, certainly with some teeth to bring some action. And I do sympathise, though, with the points that Councillor Bacon and Garrett have raised around how we need to be seen by the government. However, I believe we can perform those functions without having a standalone committee. We do have to be self-reflective. We do have to be seen to be improving ourselves, particularly in the wake of the Penn report, whether you agree with it in its entirety or not. But I believe we can do it in a better, more efficient way.
Thank you, Councillor Blake.
May I call a point of order, or a point of clarity with the monitoring officer on this? I understand that in legislative regulations that there is a role already. There is a role for the appeals panel to take on issues of standards for members. I believe that that's in the legislation. Can we just to give a little bit more alternativeness to this?
Thank you, Councillor Love, and thank you, Chairman. Yes, the existing terms of reference do indeed to cover the standards regime within the Constitution. It's not within the particular bit of legislation. It's part of the roles arising from the Localism Act and Model Code, etc. Earlier, it was mentioned, obviously, about the perceived effectiveness of the current standards regime, which was brought in by the Localism Act. Those councillors who have been within local government for a period of time will remember that prior to July 2012, there was the Standards Board for England regime, which was quite detailed. It attracted a degree of criticism as well as a degree of support, depending upon your viewpoint. The change arose in July 2012 through the Localism Act 2011, which effectively brought in a light touch regime. And I'm pleased you mentioned legislation. The present government is seeking to firm up the standards regime. The detail is not yet known in terms of any final decisions, but they have indicated a number of proposals which would put teeth back into the regime in order to assist clarity and to give greater confidence to members of the public that a standards regime will have teeth and be better suited to the current situation. It also obviously envisages an independent chair of a mandatory standards committee, but in fairness, that detail is not yet known. So in answer to your point, Councillor Love, currently we have the appeals committee set up with terms of reference. It's your decision, members. You could set up a standards committee and just transfer those elements of terms of reference over. But at the present time, we're still waiting government decision and legislation to firm up an improved standards regime. Someone who actually had given evidence to the old committee's standards in public life, when they had their call for evidence a number of years ago when I was working at Amber Valley, I did put forward a number of suggestions about many organisations and individuals that, that improvements should be made. So wait and see what the government puts forward and decides on that, because we'll have to revisit whatever you decide in due course. But it's very much in your hands. So can't give you any more detail. It's not yet available, but it's watch this space. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Monitoring Officer. Thank you, Carl. Councillor Lilly and Councillor Spink. Councillor Brodie, have you got an amendment to bring to this?
Chair, I've decided not to submit one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Lilly, Michael.
Thank you, Chair. I've read this slightly differently. It says here voluntary improvement board. If you look at page 66, and it actually says what the board will do. My particular things is it says working together across specialisms, acknowledging as well as challenging key dependencies with a collegiate approach to identifying, managing and resolving risk, exploring key issues in detail through deep dives and specially commissioned pieces of work and through workshops. The membership includes having independent external members with real, I would say, real sort of expertise of finance and governance. And I was particularly saw children's and adults. We as a local authority, as a small unitary authority, and if we remain, have some huge issues in adult social care and huge issues in children's. If we are able to develop a board and get the right expertise, to me that could improve. And if that would make savings. I was a chief executive of a national organisation and we merged different organisations and we had an improvement board to actually appeal. It actually reduced costs and it actually got reorganisation of the organisation to actually help the people that very large charity was actually helping more effectively. So I see it very positively that we actually get external help built in, working with councillors, working with officers to actually improve. I would like to see the number of children in care on this island absolutely reduced. And with the right help and etc., that could be something we could achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lilly. Councillor Spink, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this is the second time I've spoken, so I'll be as brief as I can. I would just like to say this, that if we vote for this and we vote in principle for it, I disagree with the point that's been taken. I have to say that it's then a matter of whether or not we finance it. I mean, if we've been talking about the impression that this will give to the government. If we say that these recommendations are necessary and the budget then doesn't do it, we'll be in an even worse position as far as the government's concerned. I think the correct course here is to turn this down, but it can come back for a further and more relevant, as it were, reorganisation. I don't agree with Councillor Lilly. I don't see that this board will do the matters or will be able to deal with, if one looks at its scope, with other matters. And indeed, it's not. It's put forward as a governance issue, an audit issue. So that's all I would say on that. And I shall certainly be voting against because of the wording. I don't see how, if I don't want to spend the money, how I can possibly vote for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Spink. And final one on this is Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. I was hanging back there quite a long time. I've been very concerned about everything to do with the finances of this council for some time, and the current 23 million that we're now quoted as a gap, notwithstanding other pressures which some of us are aware of or may well add to that, give us a big problem. The idea of spending 100,000 plus 200,000 plus 300,000 over a few years and putting that burden onto the budgeting process, knowing the critical nature of that process at this time, gives me a lot of doubt. The clincher came from our monitoring officer, who talked about the consultation process which has taken place and the fact that there's national legislation pending on this matter. That, for me, is an absolute clincher. for us to be marginally thinking about spending this sort of sum of money is disturbing. For us to know that we will be doing it, knowing that that money may be completely wasted or a substantial amount of it may be wasted because of pending legislation, means that it would be absurd to pass this, and we must stop this process and leave it to whoever comes in May, notwithstanding the comments of Councillor Mosdale that we heard earlier. I don't know what May will bring. The electorate will decide on that. That's what democracy is all about. But I do not think that we should be putting a burden of this matter onto them, knowing that there is pending legislation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman. I'm aware that we've been going an hour and 45, so we will take a break after this. So I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Jordan, to sum up, please.
Thank you, Chair. So a few words from me. Actually, that was quite interesting to hear those very comments, and well thought out comments, actually, as it should be. Just kind of reiterates the purpose of the proposals. But just a few comments. Councillor Brodie talks about elections in a different context. Of course, hindsight's great. Love it. We didn't know when we had to take the decision that this government was going to behave this way on devolution LGR. We just didn't know that. So we had to make a decision about elections with the information we had in front of us. You're absolutely right, Councillor Brodie. It's worked out wrong for us and for others. But we made the decision, the right decision at the time, on the information we had. We are on the government radar. It's not for the Chief Exec to speak to this, but Chief Exec is in contact with MHLG officials. We are on the government radar. I will say no more than that. Andrew, thank you. You clarified the costs. It's been mentioned elsewhere. The costs are part of the budget process. Councillor Blake also mentioned it. For a standards committee to change it, well, we need the legislation. That's what happened. The legislation is only part of these proposals. There's a page of proposals, and I guess I'd say this finally, not quite finally. I wish this wasn't here. This report. I rather wish this report wasn't in front of us tonight. But it's here for a reason. It's not here because we dreamt up this report and thought, well, this would be an idea. Let's spend a little bit of money. Let's tweak our behaviours and stuff. No, it's here because we failed as a council, as councillors in this chamber and elsewhere. We failed in the way we operated with our statutory officers. We failed to accept their advice when it was given. We failed to make decisions that were standard decisions at the time that government spotted. One of them was on LGR and the option on LGR. Government noted that it was a bog standard decision for this council to take. Just tell us what your options are. That's all. This council decided to do something else. Now, all of that is recognised, and it is being recognised. So then finally from me, on page 64, I'll just read it, item 30. The resolution aims to strengthen governance and restore trust between members and officers. Some of the proposals, well thought out that they were, well-meaning, are to discard that. We won't do that. That's not part of the proposal. So let's reject this proposal. So we won't do that. It also provides for a mechanism through which the council will seek to improve its future financial sustainability through the improvement board. These steps are essential to demonstrate to auditors. Nobody's mentioned that tonight. Auditors and government. I've mentioned government. I've now mentioned auditors because auditors also are watching this council. These steps are essential to demonstrate to the auditors and governors that the council is addressing its challenges proactively. Failure to act could result in statutory intervention, reputational damage and disruption to services. That's what you're faced with. You all have a choice to make whether to accept this proposal or not? Those are the risks to this council. And I would put the reputational damage. I suspect our residents on this island are looking once again to this council to lead this island, this local authority. And in doing so, with the mistakes we've made and the problems that we've demonstrated, we should actually be taking actions that improve and restore that confidence and reputation. So thank you, Chair. That's, do we have a second? Didn't we? Yeah.
Thank you, councillor Jordan. Right, members, we shall go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yep.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Chairman. As members know only too well, I'll read your names out. If you could please indicate whether you're for, against or abstain. Councillor Adams, please. Thank you. Councillor Andre.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bacon. For. Thank you. Councillor Beston.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Blake.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Brading.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie. Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Churchman.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Critchison.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Daw.
Abstain.
Okay. Councillor Drew.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett. Thank you. Councillor Gladwin.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Henry, I don't think arrived, did he? No, thank you. Councillor Jarman. Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lever.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly. Thank you. Councillor Love. Thank you. Councillor Lucioni.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Mosdell. Yes, thank you. Councillor Nicholson. Thank you. Councillor Nye.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Redrum.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Spink.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart.
For.
Oops, sorry. Four, thank you. And Councillor Ward, please.
Against.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, members. That motion falls. We'll have a 5-minute break and recess, 8 o'clock. Do you want the numbers, Jeff? Sorry.
Yeah, so. No worries.
That was 10 for, 2 abstentions and 21 against. Thank you, councillor Brodie. 5 minutes, folks. Members, if we could take a seat, please, and we'll crack on. Thank you very much, members. Agenda item 6B is the Local Council Tax Support Scheme 2026-27. Councillor Jordan as chair of the PFR committee to introduce the report and put a motion. Phil.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in introducing the local council tax support scheme for 26-27, but firstly, we're required to review our scheme by law each year and decide whether to amend it or continue with existing arrangements. The recommendation for council this evening is to retain the current scheme unchanged for the coming financial year. It's not a decision that we can take lightly, especially in light of, as referred to elsewhere in the chamber tonight, in view of the current funding concerns that we have. But council tax support plays a vital role in helping residents on the lowest incomes meet their council tax liability. At present, the scheme supports thousands of households across the island and represents a cost to the council of over 11 million each year. Report sets out clearly why maintaining the current scheme is the responsible option at this time. We're operating in an extremely challenging financial environment with significant pressures in adult and children's social care and the requirement to identify substantial savings as part of our budget setting process. Any increase this year in council tax support would need to be funded locally by us and would add further pressure to an already stretched, difficult financial position. But the current scheme provides a maximum of 75% support for working age claimants alongside important protections such as income disregards and capital limits. Pension age claimants continue to receive support set nationally, and we are not able to change those. Alongside the main scheme, we will continue to operate, of course, the Exceptional Hardship Fund, which allows us to provide additional help in individual cases where residents face a genuine financial difficulty. And members could note also that changes to the scheme would need to be implemented anyway within a tight statutory timetable, creating additional risk at a critical point in our budget setting process. So in short, retaining the existing scheme this year provides stability for claimants. It avoids introducing further financial risk to the council, and it allows the council to focus on managing wider budget pressures responsibly. And of course, it doesn't prevent us from reviewing, or a future council from reviewing the scheme again in future years if the circumstances change. The report is before you. I seek a seconder, Chair.
Councillor Garrett, thank you. Do you wish to speak now, Councillor Garrett?
But first, just to reflect upon where we started. Okay, we are in the 5th year of a 4-year term of office. That we started this cycle on 65%. We have improved as a council this support level to 75%. I'm sure there is no person in this room, or I'd hope there's no person in this room who would not want to see greater support given to those in the greatest hardship. One of the things that we can all do as councillors, and I certainly do, is promote awareness of this scheme. It's really important, and promote awareness of the hardship fund as well. one thing I do think that a new council might look at, and I raised this at the Policy, Finance and Resources Committee as well, is that the step nature of the scheme provides for well, it doesn't provide, it enforces a cliff edge in terms of, so we would all encourage people to earn more if they can. But there are pernicious circumstances where earning a little bit more takes you across a cliff edge. You actually lose out on the scheme. Other councils have addressed that by using a taper to taper away the level of support rather than cliff edging it into bands. I understand that is how universal credit works. So it is a well understood and well developed kind of idea. But that's something I place there in the future. If I remain on this council after May, that is something I should be certainly pushing for, but it is right that we have got this council to this level of support, that we are still intending to maintain it at this level of support despite the very, very hard financial circumstances that we have all heard about this evening that the council faces. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Jarman, Chris.
Chair, before I speak and say what I do, I have to declare an interest under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. So at the PFR committee, I did check and got clarification that 3 quite important elements would be disregarded from the calculations. Those include, in recognition of our veterans policy, of course, the veterans compensation payments which are made, veterans war pensions will be disregarded, and support under the Homes for Ukraine scheme will also be disregarded. So I think it's just important to vocalise those issues here. And to reflect that all of those reflect circumstances of war, and the first 2 are care and support for our armed forces personnel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jarman. Councillor Stevens, Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. My mind goes back to almost a year ago, I'd say, or a year ago, 12 months period, when we came into this chamber and we tried to make savings by slashing the local council tax support scheme, which also includes the hardship fund. We don't want to go down that route again. I want to give this paper the full support it deserves. I think 75%. If we can hold it at 75%, that's good. What I would say is I voted in a certain way, as you know, when it came to allowances and when it came to the previous papers, which were going to cost this council some funding. You can't have it all, but what you can do is make sure that we look after those that need to be looked after within our community at these pressing times, and they are pressing times out there. We've got residents that actually are on the knife edge, on the cliff edge, etc., and they haven't got a taper. They won't have a taper to actually assist them through. We need to make sure that we look after our own. Chairman, I'm mindful that at this moment in time we've got a 3.65 million gap in the present finances of this, as on page 72 at the top. But obviously that money will be found from reserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Brodie, Jeff.
Yeah, firstly, I just think we need to be clear. What is the gap? Is it 23 million or 3.56, as Councillor Stevens has just said? I suspect it's 23, and we need to get that message across very clearly indeed. My only remark here is regarding the previous paper and its relationship to this. If it was a gap of 3.56 million, I might be looking to increase the relief to 80% by using the money you were some of you wanted to propose wasting on a standards committee and this voluntary improvement board. But I'm not, because I've heard the message about 23 million shortfall, 23 million gap. So I'm not going to propose. I will support this paper on this occasion. But I think, frankly, Ian Stevens has been entirely consistent in here. And I applaud you for that, Ian. and I will also be supporting this paper. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Brodie. Any more comments from the floor before we go to the vote? Okay, we'll move to the vote. Back to you, mover, councillor Jordan. My apologies.
I think let's move to the vote, Chair.
Thank you. All those in favour? Anyone against? Abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to item 6C. This is your hat trick, councillor Jordan, the pay policy. If you please.
Take the ball home, Chair. The recommendation for this is that full council approve the pay policy for the 1st of April 26 to March 27. The report's in front of you. The key points are this, Chair, that the pay policy has been updated to reflect nationally agreed pay award in 25-26. That is, there is no confirmed 2026 pay award just yet. So the policy retains current rates for now. The employee contributions to the local government pension scheme have been updated. Gender pay gap figures have been refreshed as required annually to show the most recent data and continuing commitment, our continuing commitment to equality and transparency. And workforce composition by grade has been updated in the appendices to ensure accurate reporting and our public transparency. So there are no substantive changes to the terms and conditions this year. The revisions are largely technical and serve to ensure the documents up to date and compliant with our statutory requirements. The policy obviously also reinforces our obligations under the Equality Act 2010. So in summary, the pay policy provides a solid and transparent framework for remuneration decisions and maintains the status quo where appropriate. And it ensures a compliance with our legal requirements and organisational stability. I'll look for a second, Chair.
Councillor Garrett, thank you. Have we got any discussion? Should we go straight to the vote? Straight to the votes. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? And abstentions. That's that carried. Thank you. Right, members, agenda item 7, we move on to members' question before we tee off with Councillor Lilly. I would just remind members that on a supplementary, if you decide to pitch one in, applicable to the rules of procedure 4.87, councillor asking a question under the rule on questions on notice. The supplementary question must arrive directly out of the original question or the reply. Sorry, Claire, you okay? Grab some water. I'll wait. Okay. So the supplementary must arise directly out of the original question or reply. And as has been the spirit so far of the debate this evening, let's keep it respectful. So written question from Councillor Lilly to Councillor Spink. Councillor Lilly, Michael.
Sorry, Councillor Spink or the Bear Modster one? All right, thank you.
The clue's in the bit where I say Councillor Spink, Michael.
Do one.
Councillor Spink, you're not Councillor Mostel tonight. Councillor Lilly, carry on.
In light of the legal department's revelation of the council's costs in regard to the Westacre judicial review, and the sign-off for the legal costs and officer time were through officer delegated powers, has the Audit and Governance Committee and Policy and Finance Committees considered that these delegated powers need to be reviewed, especially with current budget challenges?
Councillor Spink, Peter.
I have spoken to Councillor Lilly before the meeting, I will certainly raise it at Audit and Governance. We have an informal meeting coming up this month, and then a full meeting, as it were, in March. So I will raise it. There hasn't been time to give Councillor Lilly a detailed answer, in the sense that the question only really came out in the one of the questions that Councillor Lilly asked at the recent planning committee of last Tuesday. So I think Councillor Lilly is content with my reply, although now he's looking a little puzzled, so maybe not. But I will certainly raise it at the informal meeting, and if the view is that it should be considered at the principal meeting, we will do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spink. Councillor Lee.
I think it was the meeting that was Tuesday week, but no, I'm happy that it's going to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee and Councillor Spink. Question number 2. Mike, this is a book. Again, from Councillor Lilly to Councillor Mostel.
Actually, Chair, it will be to Councillor Andre, because she is now the chair of that committee.
Of course we are. Of course it would
And
be.
you'll all be relieved of that, because otherwise I'm going to cough all the way through it. So it will be Councillor Andre as the chair of that committee.
Curveball. You didn't tee me up on that one, did you? Hey? Councillor Andre.
Can I ask a question first?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to suggest.
I've got to
Councillor
apologise
Lilly
to myself there by swearing. Councillor Lilly, please.
Thank you. The voluntary sector on the Isle of Wight has over 1,500 organisations, play a vital and important role in health and social care across the island, and is a critical preventive pathway in stopping children, young people and adults coming into statutory services. Considering the government's development of the voluntary sector covenant, what action is the Isle of Wight taking to strengthen the relationship between the voluntary and public sector and create a one island voice in health and social care and all aspects of civil society? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. And although I'm looking at Councillor Mossel, it's Councillor Andre. Let's have a bit of fun as we get into the latter part. Councillor Andre, Debbie.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question, Councillor Lilly. The Isle of Wight Council and our wider system partners already have several established programmes and structures that strengthen the relationship between the voluntary community and social enterprise sector and public services. These arrangements align closely with the principles set out in the government's own emerging civil society covenant that you reference. The Council commissioned Community Action Isle of Wight to support it in its role of promoting and supporting the voluntary community and social enterprise sector themselves, and promote and support awareness to the wider community of the opportunities and benefits of engaging in a civil society. The Isle of Wight is part of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight voluntary community and social enterprise organisations and the integrated care system. The Hampshire and Isle of Wight VSA's mission includes strengthening early intervention and prevention, tackling health inequalities, bringing the voice of communities directly into strategic planning, and embedding collaboration across organisational boundaries. We also have regular attendance and engagement, as I'm sure you're well aware, with the local Isle of Wight VSE forum. The Council directly commissions some services directly from the VSE sector. In some cases, this is where services the Council commissions, services to deliver some of its statutory roles, such as Carers Isle of Wight. The Council also works collaboratively with other partners, such as NHS Hampshire and Isle of Wight Integrated Care Board, where Living Well, Early and Intervention is jointly commissioned through the Better Care Fund. Voluntary sector partners are also key local members of strategic partnerships, including the Mental Health Alliance and Suicide Prevention Partnership and the Health and Wellbeing Board. Support has also been made available through other recent funding opportunities, such as the Household Support Fund, which has supported, amongst others, community pantries and community capacity grant funding. And on that point, I'd just like to remind everybody that the last round of community grants through the Household Support Fund, it closes at the end of January. Now that the guidance for the Crisis Response Fund has been published, we are currently working through with the VCSE groups and organisations as to how this can be used to continue to support wider civil society. The Isle of Wight already has a strong and expanding framework for collaboration with the voluntary sector, consistent with the aims of the Government Civil Society Covenant. The Council is committed to working with our community and system partners in actively strengthening partnerships and creating unified, coordinated systems, a one island voice across health, social care, and wider civil society. And that is my response. Thank you, Chair.
And as the new chair, it's a very fine response, Councillor Andre. Councillor Lilly, Michael.
No, I'm happy with that response.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next written question is from Councillor Gladwin to Councillor Jordan. Caroline, please.
On the 3rd of January, there was tragically a fatal car accident in my ward at the very spot I had warned Island roads and highways there could be a fatal accident 5 months before and requested action in the way of a warning sign. I was informed that all such requests are only considered at a November annual review, and my request for it to be made urgent fell on deaf ears. Also, from the responses, it is clear that no investigation took place that would have exposed the full extent of the problem. In future, can all such requests from councillors with serious safety issues be treated urgently?
Thank you, Councillor Gladwin.
Chair, can I make a point of, not of order, but of sensitivity possibly? Certainly, notwithstanding this is a very close personal friend of mine, I would like to beseech the leader not to answer this question audibly and simply just post the response. Notwithstanding the fact that it says a very close personal friend of mine, it is not yet 3 weeks since the incident. And also it's a matter of an ongoing police investigation. So
Say no more, Councillor Blake. Say no more. Councillor Jordan,
You're happy to respect that. As we know, these are public documents and can be accessed by the public. I'm happy to, the response is in front of all of you. You have the reply. I'm happy to leave it at that.
Sorry, Chair, can I just add that I read this response and actually I think this should have come earlier in the day because all of us as councillors have read this and having seen the outcry of what was a very popular and well-respected member of the public who sadly passed away and also knowing the close friendship, I'm surprised that we got to the point in this evening what is a response that clearly is something that's ongoing, but actually if the family were reading this in this public domain, it would be incredibly hurtful, and I'm sure it does, but I was going to stop this earlier, so thank you for doing that.
so let's stop that now. Here we go. Final question for this evening from Councillor Brodie to Councillor Jordan. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, I will presume you are as committed to the council and all your councillor colleagues being as transparent as possible in council decision making as I am. You will also be well aware of the legal requirement for a full declaration of interest by each and every councillor for publication on the council website. Therefore, will you join me in welcoming and applauding the decision of the returning and substantive monitoring officer that Reform UK Councillor Gladwin at last be required to reveal her portfolio of rental properties on the Isle of Wight, a requirement that will inform islanders as to whether she has a vested interest in council decisions she is participating, a decision that should have been made at the time of Councillor Gladwin's election in May last year, 8 months ago, a soon after. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Brodie. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. So all councillors are required to declare interest in accordance with the council's code of conduct and statutory requirements. And the monitoring officer is responsible for determining what must be declared and published. The council will continue to follow that process consistently and in line with the law.
Councillor Brodie.
Could I ask the leader then, why wasn't the law and procedure applied consistently in this case last May? And why has it been left until only this month to have been resolved, despite my protestations supported by 18 other members of this council? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Brodie. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. We relied, interestingly, earlier we have decided not to make any approach to change governance of this council and the actions following the Penn report and the proposal. But part of that report indicated this, and that is we have taken account of the monitoring officer's decision. We did so then, we do so now, and we move forward on the basis that the monitoring officer has made his decision on this.
Thank you, councillor Jordan. Members, it just remains for me to say thank you very much for your respectful debates and input this evening. Thank you very much. It's exactly how it should be done. And I'll call this meeting to a close. Thank you.